setup I'm about to walk you through is on this Les Paul Special guitar. It's actually not a Les Paul Special, it's a copy of one. It's a Hohner Professional L60. But it's exactly the same principle. And in fact, it's the same principle for any guitar that's really got a tune-o-matic bridge like this. I'm going to go through it in stages and keep it quite simple in this video. I'm going to assume you've changed the strings already. If, like me, you've just done some work on your guitar, I've changed these pickups over, or you've taken all the strings off for any reason, I recommend that you use this opportunity to give your guitar a good clean. You could clean the fretboard, perhaps just put some lemon oil on it. I would use it as a chance to go over and tighten everything, especially the nuts and bushings on your tuning pegs, which might come loose, they might rattle, and also it could cause tuning issues. Check the input jack and anything else really that's screwed down. Sometimes the tone and volume controls tend to come a bit loose, so pull the knobs off and tighten them. But in this video, I'm going to walk you through a few key stages. First of all is the truss rod adjustment. Very important to make sure that your guitar plays as best as it can. Then we're going to look at the string height, otherwise known as the action, and then the intonation. The intonation is so key to making sure your guitar is in tune on every fret. And if you haven't heard about intonation before, make sure you watch that far. There's one other stage, which is the pickup height. I always think the pickup height should be left to at the end. But just to let you know, those first three stages, you might find you have to go back and forth a bit. Once you've changed the truss rod and then the string height, you might move the intonation, have to change the string height again. It might affect the truss rod slightly. It's always a bit of back and forth, especially if it's the first time you've done it to your guitar. And if you've got a good guitar, you won't have to change the setup that often. I recommend just going over it every time you change a string, especially if you're changing string gauge, because the string gauge or the thickness of the string will make a difference to your setup. So bear that in mind. So once again, I'm just simply walking you through these stages. I actually have other videos that focus on each of these elements in much more detail, but you don't necessarily need that now to set up your guitar. It might be something you're interested in looking at later if you want to know more about why we're doing everything. So let's get down to my workbench and set up this guitar. So what's key here is tune your guitar and tune it to the tuning you use when you play. So if you play in standard tuning, great, leave it in standard tuning. But if you play with drop D or something different, make sure you set your guitar up using the tuning you use most often. And although for this video I'm doing almost everything with it flat on the bench, I also recommend you do as much as you can in the playing position. So for a lot of you that will mean sat down holding your guitar like this. There's no need to stand up to do it all. It's just easier for me when I'm filming to have it flat on the surface. Now a lot of new guitars will come with the right Allen key to make the adjustment to your truss rod. You're probably going to find it's an Allen wrench or an Allen key that you use to make the adjustment. Sometimes it might be something different, like a screwdriver. You'll be able to see just by looking down from the end of your guitar. So it might be a screwdriver, it might be an Allen wrench. I've got a long one here, which makes it really easy to access the truss rod. Or it might be something like this, where this end clips over the truss rod and you can adjust like this. And key to the adjustment of the truss rod is putting a capo on the first fret. And then once you've done that, put your finger on the guitar string, start with the lower sixth, where it meets the body of the guitar. And then you want to find the roughly halfway point, which is the 7th fret. And you use a string gauge. And you want to check the height of the string now above the fret. Now certain companies make specific gauges for your guitars, but essentially you can just use any old feeler gauge. You can buy them in packs off of eBay or Amazon. So I like to use this one. It's a 0.01 inch. Is that 100th of an inch? I really don't know as a Brit. It's 0.254 millimeters. Again, it's best to do all of this in the playing position, so with your guitar upright. But once your feeler gauge goes over the 7th fret, between the string and the 7th fret, you want to adjust the truss rod so that it can slide in and out perfectly without either being too tightly squashed between the string and the fret, or there being too much of a gap between the string and the fret. Like I said at the beginning of this video, this is something you might come back to later on when you make other adjustments. So for now, we're using this as our guide. You also do it at the top E string. So you've done it to both the low and the top E string. The next thing to adjust is the string height, otherwise known as the action of your guitar. So I've got this gauge which allows me to read the height of the string above the 12th fret. So at this point, I've taken off of my capo. I'm looking at the 12th fret on the low E string. So what you're aiming for is a rough guide again here, because it depends on your own playing. Some people like a higher action, some people like a lower action. So for the low E, you want, if this is the top of the fret at the 12th fret, you want the string, the bottom of the string of the 6th string to be roughly 2 millimeters off of the fret. Some people might like it up to 2.5 millimeters. And then when you go all the way across to the top E at the 12th fret, you want the top of the fret and the bottom of the string to have a gap of maybe 1.5 millimeters. Some people like 1 millimeter. It really depends on your playing, but I normally set my guitars up where the E and the A, bottom E and A, have 2 millimeters off of the fret. Then I go for 1.75 millimeters for the D and G, and then the top B and E, I go for 1.5 millimeters. That's how I like to play. Don't forget, I have more videos that really go into in-depth reasons for all this. So if you want to know more, check the links in my description on YouTube for this, which makes links to all of those videos, including a bigger breakdown of what intonation is. But intonation is the next step. So I want to give you a quick highlight of what intonation is by having a snippet from one of those videos. The fret should be exactly half of the length of the string. Now imagine you're holding down at the 12th fret. What's going to happen when you pluck your string is you're going to vibrate the bit of the string between the bridge and your finger at the 12th fret. Because it is exactly half the length of the entire open string, will play the same note as the open string, but an octave higher. Now imagine you haven't got your guitar correctly intonated. Your guitar string is a bit short because your bridge, or the saddles on the bridge, are a bit closer to the 12th fret than they should be. This will mean when you hold down the 12th fret and pluck it, what you're finding is you're plucking a bit of string which isn't quite half the length of the guitar string, and it will sound sharp. If your bridge was too far back, your string is now going to be slightly longer past the 12th fret to the bridge, and that will make your note slightly flat. So the way we make an adjustment for this guitar to the intonation or the string length is by moving the saddles backwards and forwards by turning these screws here, the screws in the back of the bridge. Now, even if you've got a slightly different bridge to this, it's probably done in the same way for this type of guitar. However, if you've got a totally different bridge on your guitar, don't worry, I've got videos covering loads of different bridges, so you can go and find them. Again, a link in my description below. Now, I'm playing my open E. I can tell from my tuner, which is off camera, that it's perfectly in tune. Now I'm going to play the E at the 12th fret. And I can see if it is still in tune or not. So it's slightly off, which means a string adjustment. Now, if I turn the screw one way, the saddle will move and it will become a longer string. If I turn the screw the other way, the saddle will move the opposite direction and it will become a shorter string. So what you'll find is if your guitar string is sharp when you play it at the 12th fret, you'll need to lengthen the string to make it right. If your note is flat at the 12th fret, you'll have to shorten the string to make it correct. So there's no need for me to show you exactly how to do this on all 6 strings. It's exactly the same system for each string because each string is on its own saddle, controlled independently of each other in exactly the same way as each other. I'm just going to pause the video there for one moment to say that my videos are not supported or sponsored by anyone, and I don't do any paid promotions. So if you're finding this useful, I would really appreciate your support. There's multiple ways you can support. Simply liking and commenting, sharing this with other people is one of the best ways to show your appreciation of what I'm doing. I love hearing your feedback. And if you've got any comments about what we're doing, maybe tips and suggestions for other people, leave them in the YouTube comments as well for other people to look at. So if you are here for the first time, do check out the comments in case someone else has got some brilliant tips for you. Talking about tips, you could tip me a cup of tea. I really appreciate those small donations that people leave me. They all add up and they help me justify the time that I spend making these videos. Anyway, that's a long enough interruption. Let's get back to the bench. So essentially you've got your guitar set up now. It should be playing really well because you've got your string length exactly right for your intonation and you've got your string height exactly right for the action that you like. You've adjusted the truss rod so you're not getting fret buzz on anything. Now just remember, once you've done all these 3 steps, you might want to go back and check things. So this is a really good point to go back. Maybe just check your truss rod, check your string height, check the intonation's still good. Each of these things will affect the other. So when you're making one change, it's likely to affect the other slightly. That's why you try to do everything in the playing position with your guitar tuned as you want it, because if you're doing any of that differently, it makes a difference as well. But there is one key thing I like to do now, and that is adjusting the pickups. Now, most of you are going to want the same output volume from each pickup, and you're only changing pickups to change the tone. There might be a reason that you might want one of your pickups particularly louder than the other. But what I'm going to show you now is how to set them the same as each other, and then you can work out if you want the loudness difference, how to do that yourself. Basically, I'm going to play the low E string, and I'm going to go backwards and forwards between each pickup. And I want to adjust them so they sound the same by turning the screw at the low E side of the pickup. The closer the pickup is to the string, the louder it's going to be. So I want to go up and down on each pickup until they're both the same level as each other. But be careful, I don't want it to go so close that the string catches, and I don't want it to go so close that it's actually distorting because it's almost touching the string. So if you hear it distorting, or you notice when you're playing, that's why I like to do it in the playing position. If you notice when it's playing that it's catching the pickup, go lower and then adjust them to equally. And once you've done that, it's simply a matter of adjusting each individual pickup so the angle of them is right, so that each side is giving the same output. And what I mean by that is play the low E, play the high E, and then double check, is the output roughly the same? If you're finding that the high E is a lot quieter, you need to raise the side with the high E higher by turning the screw to make the volume output louder because it's closer to the string. Again, with the same caveat, you don't want it to distort and you don't want it to catch on the string when you're playing. If it is distorting and catching on the string when it's playing, you don't want to raise it higher, you instead want to lower the other side. Once you've done that with both pickups, double check that the top E's sound roughly the same volume, double check the low E's sound roughly the same volume, maybe strum some chords, you're sorted. If you want one of them louder than the other, for example, if you want one, particularly when you're playing a lead, to not just have a different tone, but to have a different volume, you can lower the other pickup to pull back on its volume. I wouldn't ever raise them because now you've set it up right. If you raise it, you run the risk of catching the string or getting that kind of nasty feedback because the pickup is too close. And here, as you pan round, you can see that the pickups are slightly different heights to each other. That's basically because the strings become further away from the guitar body as they go towards the bridge. So the bridge pickup needs to be a bit higher. And also you'll notice that particularly on the neck pickup here, it's at a slight angle to allow for an equal volume output from the low string and the top string. So once again, thank you so much for watching. I did mention at the beginning that I have some other videos that go into more depth about this. I've got a long setup video. It's not on a Les Paul special, but it covers all of the elements which are totally applicable to this guitar in a lot more detail, and it looks at all the tools, etc. you need. If you fancy finding out more, I'll leave a link to that in the video description on YouTube and in the cards, along with a focused video on the Tune-o-matic bridge, looking at how all of the parts in it work, which may be useful if you want to do any repair work on your own bridge. I've also got videos explaining what intonation is and focusing on those elements I mentioned right at the start of the video, the sort of daily maintenance, as I call it, of cleaning your guitar and making sure that it's going to be in tip-top condition. So do hit the like and subscribe, and thank you once again for watching. Until next time, happy strumming.